Hello. Today we have a very interesting guest. We have Robert Long, who's the VP of Economic Development for Forsyth County and Cumming-Forsyth County Chamber of Commerce. Robert is a professional with over 20 years experience in economic and community development and an active member of the Georgia Economic Developers Association. You know, most people know that a county collects taxes and provides community services, but they do not realize that a county is a business, a big business, that is competing for market share and revenue just like every other business. It will be enlightening to learn from Robert the business development activities for Forsyth County Chamber of Commerce for attracting residents and doing business in and with the county. A little background on Robert, just to get to know him a little bit. He's a graduate of Florida State University, and what's interesting is he graduated with a degree in demography, so we'll have him explain that. And he's also a graduate with honors in sociology from the University of South Carolina-Aiken. But what's more interesting is Robert dedicated himself to community development right from the get-go, so that's kind of interesting as well. So Robert, please just tell us a little bit more about yourself and how you got involved in economic development for communities.
Sure. As you mentioned, I've been doing economic development over 20 years now. I'm one of those people, when I got into economic development, I probably couldn't have told you what economic development was. I did my undergraduate in sociology at SCCED. I had some connections, and I enjoyed the number side of sociology, and went forward and got my master's in demography. At the same time, when you got your master's in demography, it's like, what do you do with a master's in demography?
What is
demography at its heart is population studies, and I will say the program at Florida State, our curriculum included economics, sociology, geography, urban planning, and at the time, in retrospect, it's been a fantastic degree. They provided a great foundation for it, particularly being a local economic developer, because I tell people, we have to know a little bit about a lot. And at the same time, when you think of population, there's a direct correlation between population and workforce, workforce is vitally important to, it's kind of the lifeblood for economic development. What kind of workforce do you have? Where do you attract? What's the labor shed? Where do you get your workers from? Because although I work for a county, businesses don't really care about the county line. They were looking, where's my workers going to come from? And so I know a lot of folks, developers get very territorial. You really have to be a little more open-minded because, like I said, businesses don't care where that county line is. They just care where the workers are coming from.
Well, I'm going to go back to the demography, which is very important because this is the Business Developers Network, and business development is holistic. It really is more than just marketing and sales. It's how you get to marketing and sales. And the insight and the analysis is very important. Right? So that really applies not just to understanding the community, but it applies to any business understanding and connecting themselves to the market.
Oh, sure. And like I said, at that time, you could not get a degree in economic development. That's changed. I mean, Georgia Tech has you get a master's in economic development today. That didn't exist, 20 years ago.
You could probably teach it now.
What I will say is that several of the folks I knew that were in my class or a year ahead of me in my demography program actually ended up in economic development. And so it's not just me. It's turned out to be a fantastic kind of foundation for this. And I said my first job, out of school, was back in my home community. I said I assumed when I got this sort of specialized degree, I'd have to go to Atlanta, Charlotte, Birmingham's a bigger market. And I was very fortunate. I was able literally to go right back home and start my career in economic development right off the bat. And I spent 14 years in Aiken-Edgefield County before going over and being the economic development director in Darlington County when they were Florence, South Carolina. And then 6 or 7 years ago, I came to Georgia.
Well, welcome, and we're glad you did. Let's talk about Forsyth County and Cumming for just a moment. Forsyth County and the city of Cumming is located in the northeast edge of metro Atlanta, on the shores of Lake Lanier and the foothills of North Georgia mountains. It's home to some of the largest and most innovative companies across the state, nation, and globe. Just recently I did a tour of Scientific Games, the printer of all the lottery tickets, and they create billions of lottery tickets, just an amazing facility. it has a strategic location in northern Georgia. It has a talented workforce, very good education. Property taxes are actually fairly low.
Yes, we're actually one of the lowest property tax communities in the state of Georgia.
Mm-hmm. So let's talk about the county, just to give people an introduction to it more than I just said.
On paper, Forsyth County should not be successful. We have no interstate, we have no rail, and because we had no traditional rail, we had no traditional industry that located in Forsyth County. So up and through the 80s, we were one of the smallest, poorest counties in all of Georgia. And the game changer for us was Georgia 400. Georgia 400 is our interstate. That has been our lifeblood. That really was, took us from literally being one of the poorest counties in the state, and then in only less than 30 years to become the most affluent county in the state of Georgia. Has been phenomenal. But because of that, there are certain kind of projects that don't make sense for Forsyth County. If you're a project and we don't see, oftentimes somebody says, well, we want to be on the interstate. If we're not within 2 or 3 miles of an interstate interchange, we don't want to look at you. Well, if that's your attitude and that's what your criteria is, you're not going to even look at Forsyth County. But what we have found is that we have a lot of folks that have, as the pressures of Georgia 400 of North Fulton through the city of Alpharetta, that pressure obviously drew highly educated workforce that lives in our community, and it's really been sort of something that sort of has developed kind of organically over the last 20 years or so.
That's interesting that you mentioned on paper Forsyth County would not be an area that would experience any kind of growth or attract businesses, because as of right now it is rated as one of the fastest growing communities in one of the counties, one of the fastest in the state of Georgia. It has the healthiest county, which maybe you can tell us what that means. But this is kind of interesting. It's also the most affluent county in the state of Georgia. And it's a community for incoming investment, and it has a very high-rated public school system. So elaborate on that a little bit.
Sure. I'll start with the school system. I think when people want to move to a community, I think school system, particularly if you have school-age kids, is one of the top priorities. You want to look for the areas that you think has the best school system, and we're very fortunate that our school system over the last 20 years has really has become the #1 school system in the state of Georgia. If you look at the statistics, we have the highest ACT, highest SAT scores. We have a very innovative school system. We have 5 traditional high schools at the moment. We have a 6th that's getting ready to open, which will be Denmark High School in South Forsyth, to kind of relieve some pressure from the other schools, because unfortunately when you have rapid growth, with that you have overcrowding in your schools, and you have to, it takes a little while to be able to get the funding and the financing to be able to build the next school. The school I'm most excited about is the Alliance Academy. The Alliance Academy is our first countywide high school, no athletics, and it's got really some specialized programs that literally no other school systems are offering in the state of Georgia. We have a specialized program on mechatronics. We have a specialized program on aviation, where you can have flight simulators, and if you want to be able to get your general aviation pilot's license before you graduate high school, you have that opportunity. They have a school system with if you're interested in law or anything associated with law, we have a classroom that's got a mock courtroom in it, so you can actually have students be able to do some experience what it's like to be in that particular courtroom. Is literally is built off a scale model of our actual courtroom in Cumming, Georgia. So it's and then like on the first responders program, there's a mock-up of a ambulance where you can actually practice what it's like to be able to get people on a stretcher and get them in the ambulance, and how do you treat them. They have a mock-up of a living room, and so you can use that to experience how do you get somebody off of bed who's falling on the ground and hurt themselves. But you can also use it for crime scene investigation. So you can do a mock-up crime scene and then let the kids figure out how to solve that crime. So these are some just innovative programs that the Alliance Academy, literally we just had a grand opening for it this past Saturday. And it's really going to be, I think, a game changer in education, because it's just going to be, have some fantastic programs, like as I mentioned, that literally no other high school has.
Well, it's interesting that you mentioned the public school systems, because remember now, a county is really serving 2 masters, if you will. You're trying to draw your residential, and you're trying to draw business, and they're kind of symbiotic in a way, because in order to draw businesses and workers, you have to have good school systems, you have to have good traffic flow, you have to have retail, there's many things that need to service the community. And outstanding communities and economics for them do not happen by chance. They're built on a foundation of leadership and relationships. And Cumming and Forsyth County has a very interesting relationship between the chamber and the county government, which is unusual to.
Sure. I mean, I'd say the vast majority of economic development is done through development authorities. And every county has a development authority, and oftentimes that's how you fund and run your economic development efforts. We do ours through the chamber. We are one of the few what we call full-service chambers. We have our traditional chamber, which is the business membership side, and we have lots of programs to support our business community. We do tourism, and we do economic development. There are not really a whole lot of chambers that do kind of the trifecta, do all three of those functions.
Explain that a little bit more in depth, because that is unusual. It's almost like a quasi-government
part of that
department.
We are a vendor to Forsyth County. We are a vendor to the city of Cumming to provide both tourism and economic development services. I won't take credit for it. It was involved, I guess, to develop that relationship long before I came on board. But I think it's very beneficial because, you go to other communities, you have the county doing economic development, you'll have the chamber doing economic development, you have all the various cities doing economic development, and it becomes a really crowded field. Who do I talk to get something done? Who do I, if I have a question, who do I talk to? And it gets confusing. In our community, it's just me, and I have one project manager, and we are the economic development team for Forsyth County. There's no one else that does that but us. And so from a community, or from a company's perspective, looking at Forsyth County, it's very simplistic. We are the contact. There is nobody else doing what we do. How can we help you?
It seems to be a streamlined model. As other communities looking at it now?
I think Hall County has a Chamber of Commerce. I don't know if they do tourism, but they definitely do economic development with Hall County. And the same thing, so we're not unique. There are a few who do it, but like I said, we're a little unusual because if you think of the 159 counties, there's probably less than 10 that do economic development as well as tourism.
Let's look at the business side of what your department, your I want to say company, but your entity, right, the chamber, has to do. You have a human resource council, you have an international engagement initiative, you have a manufacturing society, you have a healthcare association. Drill down on a little bit of those.
We are an extremely busy chamber, and we have a little bit of something for everybody. And there are certain things that fall directly underneath me. One of that is the Manufacturing Society. For the Manufacturing Society, we have quarterly breakfast programs. We do specific programs and bring in speakers to talk about things that we think are important for the manufacturing community. On the international engagement, we bring in, and I'd say the international engagement, it leans towards international manufacturers. We have over 75 international companies in our community. Of those, 25 have a headquarters component too. So the program is a little bit different in that we'll also do some programs on trades. For example, our Q3 breakfast program coming up in end of August. Everybody's talking about the tariffs and what's the impact. I'm getting components from Mexico, and I'm now going to get hit by steel tariffs, and what can I do to avoid that? And well, we partner, like anybody else, we partner, with statewide folks. We partner with the Georgia Department of Economic Development. We partner with the Metro Atlanta Chamber of Commerce. So we have a speaker from the international trade of the Georgia Department of Economic Development who will come in to speak about what's going on, what are they seeing on the ground, what's the latest on the tariffs, trade wars going on, and then what is that process if you do want to file for an exemption from the tariff? How do you do that, and how do you apply? And somebody will help hold your hand to do that. They also have programs. We work the Metro Chamber where they have what's called they do what's called the Export Challenge, and they look for companies that are looking to expand internationally, and that's important because international companies, if you have a broader base of business and customers, when you have those ebbs and flows in a community or an economy that inevitably happen, you have recessions. There's just a cycle that happens. Well, the more customers you have and the more diverse regions of the world you have those, you're able to ride out those ebbs and flows of the economy much better than companies that are only selling domestically. So we partner with folks like with Metro Chamber on trade programs. We hosted a group earlier this year. So if you were interested in trade and how do you do that, it can be scary if you've never and at the same time, what countries, and there's hundreds of countries, what areas of the world do I want to target for my particular project? There are folks who will help you, hold your hands, and help you figure it out, and then help you get into those markets.
Well, it's been very successful because I don't know, I just learned recently in the last year that Atlanta is really the home for the Southeast for most companies that want to import here for the whole Southeast. I think there's more consuls here.
Correct. I think there's over I think there's over 100 consulates in our community. So and I think a big part of that is Atlanta, the airport. And
right.
I know we've had several programs on the international engagement side where we've actually brought in the Consul General of that country for our two international programs. We had a Danish company, Hydrema, host us, and we had the Honorary Consul General come in to be our guest speaker for that program. So we're kind of blessed that we have all these resources right in our community. And we as locally gone developers, we try to take advantage of that as much as we can and come up with some very good innovative programming for our folks to learn about what's going on. I know one of the manufacturing programs we did earlier this year was OSHA. We had the Deputy Director of OSHA be our speaker. Well, most folks don't want OSHA coming into their plant. I mean, that's at least not willingly. And so we had that at our local, Post Road Library hosted that meeting, and it's a safe environment. Our opportunity to ask questions, and of course, we made sure we didn't do name tags. So you could have a conversation with the Deputy Director of OSHA and not be worried about any kind of implications. But it's just a forum for you to learn what's going on. And like anything else, nothing's stagnant, nothing's stationary. And there's changes every year. There's new regulations that come down the pike or change. And it's an opportunity for you as HR or safety manager of that particular plant in a safe environment to ask those questions.
Well, and that door swings both ways, by the way. One is attracting foreign companies to do business here, sure. whether to create businesses or factories or have space here. But there's also the importing, the exporting, sure. helping companies learn how they could go worldwide with their markets and discover their markets.
A great partner we have is the Georgia Tech MEP Manufacturing Extension Partnership. So if you have a company and they're looking like, well, how do we get leaner and meaner and produce less product and add automation and stay competitive? The MEPs will basically come in and help you rearrange your entire plant floor to be a more, to basically have the most efficient layout for product flow, so that you can, oftentimes you can reduce your footprint of your plant because you could, with the better flow, you don't need as much square footage, and then when you free up square footage, and that allows you to add another piece of equipment, and so forth. So the MEP has been, very active on our advisory board with our manufacturing society, and has helped us for numerous programs, and bringing in speakers and so forth as well. So, we're just very blessed. We have so many great partners in our community.
Well, talking about manufacturing, I know I'm working with a lot of manufacturers right now, and by the way, Georgia is the home of about 10,000 manufacturing companies. But a big issue right now is having skilled workers working in the manufacturing plants. So it's not, when people think of immigration labor doing farm work, it's really a big part of the manufacturing environment as well.
Well, we have a lot of problems. When little Johnny's trying to figure out what he wants to do for a living, mommy wants him to go to a 4-year college and get a 4-year college degree, and that may not be the best fit for Johnny and his skill set. I mean, you can go to get a 2-year associate degree in welding, and if you're willing to get certifications to travel, you can be making 6 figures. And even with manufacturing, I think there's still this vision of what they've seen on some movie from 20 years ago about what a dirty manufacturing plant looks like. Most modern manufacturing plants, you could practically eat off the floor. They're very clean environments. They've added a lot of robotics and sophisticated technology to the automation. One of the things, like we have a current economic development strategic plan, it says, well, one of our targets is advanced manufacturing, and my response back is, well, what manufacturing left in the U.S. isn't advanced manufacturing? And so I think there's this misconception of what does a modern manufacturing plant look like? And one of the programs we have done that's been very successful, this will be our 3rd year doing it, is National Manufacturing Day is on the first Friday of October. So this year it's on October 5th. We've done a program with our high school kids. And these are kids that are interested in engineering. They're on the robotics team. They're very active in their schools. Well, we've done a program. The first year we had 4 of our 5 high schools participating. We had about 90 kids. Last year we had all 5 high schools participating, about 120 kids. And this year we have 2 new high schools. I mentioned the Alliance Academy in Denmark, so we'll have 7 high schools participating. So we'll hopefully have 150 plus kids. They basically get to do 3 tours of manufacturing plants in the morning. We meet up for lunch. We have a mini college fair at lunch, and then they get to do 1 more afternoon. And these are both 10th, 11th, and 12th graders, so if we do this over several years, these kids get exposed to maybe a dozen different manufacturing companies in our community. They get to see real life application of things they're learning in the classroom. I give an example, a lot of these kids are already doing stuff with CAD, they're doing stuff with SolidWorks where you can turn it into 3D rendering, and they get to go into a manufacturing plant and see real life applications of how people are making a product, making money, using that skill set. And then they get to go walk out on the floor and see how it's actually being manufactured. And so there's a connection between what they're learning in the classroom with what is being utilized in the workforce, and then how do you take that and make a product of it? Because at the end of the day, you're making a product or providing a service that people want to purchase and spend money to do that. And to be able to make that connection. And of course, we added the college fair last year because we want the kids to understand that to get there, you got to get an education. You got to go somewhere, either tech school or college or somewhere. So last year we had 4 colleges and universities participate. This year we'd love to have more, and because it's important for kids to make those linkages.
Well, I just want to reiterate what you just mentioned about the opportunity that's there in 6 figures or high 5 figures.
Oh, sure.
So that kids looking or considering this understand, and parents understand. Most manufacturing facilities I know, the labor force is a high percentage, like 60% are over 40 years.
Yeah, you have an aging workforce, particularly when you get in, like say, the mechanical or electronic or maintenance type position or mechatronics type of positions in a manufacturing plant. It's definitely an aging workforce. We don't have enough young folks talented going into that field, and so it's a challenge. It's a challenge for Forsyth. It's a challenge for everybody. People right now, we're nationally, we're record low in employment. Forsyth County's 3.5% unemployment right now.
Wow. And
finding folks with that skill set is a challenge, and that's where the new high school we've created with the mechatronics program, I think, is really of all the programs they're offering, I'm most excited about, because it's going to help create that pipeline and interest. And like I said, if you're a maintenance position in manufacturing plant, you can be making 6 figures because it's a highly sought after skill set.
Well, I'm going to bring the conversation back to Cumming-Forsyth County Chamber of Commerce. So let's look at what are the goals of the residents and what are the goals of business. They're slightly different. Can you articulate what they are?
Well, we had a sort of a shift in our board of commissioners. We have 5 commissioners, and we had a little bit of shift and I think people, I guess the new commissioner came on board. They were trying to put in things to kind of some of the high density development, trying to slow that down a little bit. But when we had our conversation, that we thought there was just going to be this adversarial with this, between the county and the chamber. But what we understood when we started having a conversation is, as a chamber, we don't really have a dog in the fight when it comes to the residential. We may have our personal opinion, but everybody agreed that we need to grow the commercial. We need to grow the non-residential. So we found common ground, and with that common ground, we have more support, financial support from the Forsyth County government that we have literally ever had in our history of organization, history of our Chamber of Commerce. It's that relationship with that understanding that we need to grow. If we don't want to become a bedroom community, we need to be more aggressive in our economic development efforts to attract new capital investment and jobs in our community. We have a study going on right now that's being funded by the county. We've hired a company out of Austin, Texas called TIP Strategies or TIP Strategies that is doing our first, really professional, consultant that's doing a 5-year economic development strategic plan. We've been on this process with them most of the year. That plan is finally going to be rolled out in August, and I'm personally very excited because it's a new plan. It's very innovative. There's some short-term, long-term kind of goals, but there are some really innovative things that are going to, push back to the community, that y'all really need to move forward with. For us, we're still, we'll continue to go after manufacturing. Manufacturing, as a rule, is very capital intensive, particularly modern advanced manufacturing. The wages, associated with that have gone up. If you look at the statistics right now, but manufacturing wages are going up because it's kind of supply and demand. And I think part of that's also the skill set. The skill set associated with manufacturing today is different from 20 years ago. It's much more automation, and with that, the skill set and the equipment these people need to run. That's a higher skill set that results in a higher wage associated with those folks. Another big emphasis we're working on right now is technology. Those kind of people who are doing software development, developing apps, and so forth. We think that's a huge opportunity that we can move forward. We already have some bones of that already. We already have some technologies companies in our community in South Forsyth that sort of spilled over into our county from North Fulton in the city of Alpharetta. We believe that's a huge opportunity for us because a lot of these folks, even if they don't, they live in our community, they go south and they kind of get caught in the commuting, an hour plus to get to work. And if we can create opportunities for these folks to find a job closer to home, I think most of them would jump at it. We're in a very unique situation where, particularly when it comes to technology companies, where folks are trying to how do we attract this talent? What do we do to either tag talent or grow this talent in our community? And we're in a situation where very enviable that the talent already lives in our community. And the issue we have is 75% of that talent leaves our community for jobs. So low-hanging fruit for us is that's a huge opportunity. If we can create the opportunity, create the office space, office park, those type of environments, they will stay local, if they have an option.
I'm sorry to interrupt,
Sure.
but I noticed that we're running out of time, and I had 3 more questions. I'm going to lay them all on you, and this way you could answer if you can. Number 1, I lived in the Woodlands, which is a suburb of Houston, very similar to Alpharetta in distance and the way it was developed. It has maxed out. They cannot build a new home in that community, and very limited how many businesses. So what is Forsyth's position now, or what you see in the future? What are the changes in the demographics for Forsyth and Cumming? And lastly, what attributes do you admire in other counties or other communities outside of Cumming and Forsyth, or Georgia, that you think could be achieved in Forsyth? Let me see if you can remember all 3.
Well, demographically, we are, as you mentioned, we're growing. We're close to 230,000 population now. We mentioned we're very affluent. I think our family household income is almost $95,000. The people that are coming in that our community are highly educated. Almost, I think, 46% of our population has a college degree, a bachelor's degree. And then if you look at the demographic shift, historically, Forsyth County has been very homogeneous. Today, that's no longer the case. I think close to 12% of our population is Asian. That is easily by far our fastest growing segment of our population is Korean and Indian. There's folks of the Korean and Indian descent. And the one thing that's very interesting with that demographic is we're one of the only counties in the entire United States where the immigrant population is actually better educated than the native population.
Interesting.
And it's because you have these folks that are working in software development. They have PhDs, master's degrees, and those are the kind of folks that are coming into our community.
Yeah.
And it's really, from my perspective as a demographer, my background, it's just fascinating, that doesn't happen
Right.
in the normal circumstances. They have these folks coming into your community, and at the same time, they're vitally important for our future success in our community.
And I know you couldn't remember all 3 questions. The last was, what attributes of other communities outside of Forsyth and Cumming, whether it be in Georgia or outside of Georgia, do you look at and say, gee, that's something that we would like to have here?
Well, I think we were looking at more incubator space. We're looking for opportunities to do more of the grow our own, because if you're an entrepreneur, if you're in your 50s, you take an early separation package, you still already live in Forsyth County. We think there's a huge opportunity for these folks. They're not ready to retire.
Right.
There's an opportunity for them to have a second career, and what we can do as a community to create that incubator or co-working space. So that'll be one of the recommendations that'll be coming out of this TIP strategy that we're hoping to come out next month, is how do we do a better job of growing our own. And so, I think I mentioned before. I think we're in a very enviable position. We have the second most shoreline with Lake Lanier. I think we're not doing as good a job to use that as a resource in our community. Hall County has several resorts. They have Lanier Islands. We don't have that on the Forsyth side. And so, what can we do to do a better job of using the lake as a resource? We are, as I mentioned earlier, we're sort of the gateway to the North Georgia mountains. What can we do as a community to take better advantage of that as a marketing tool, for our community?
Well, in the minute we have left, is there any summation you'd like to make on behalf of yourself or the county and city?
One thing that I guess I haven't mentioned yet is the Halcyon development Exit 12.
Oh, yes, thank you.
Halcyon is the largest mixed-use development under construction right now in the whole metro Atlanta area, $370 million development. It's also our first development that's going to take advantage of the Big Creek Greenway. Everybody talks about the perimeter and all the development that's happening on the perimeter on the belt line right now. This is our belt line. The Big Creek Greenway is, I think, this is really going to be a test case to, to really truly market that as a tool for that live, work, play environment and so forth.
Explain the Beltway, because our listeners are not just necessarily from Atlanta or Georgia.
Well, the belt line is, it's basically a perimeter around the city of Atlanta. It kind of mimics, I guess, the 285, the interstate system goes around. And a lot of this redevelopment, you're taking old rail tracks, you're taking them up, but you're using that right of way to develop, wide, paths for people to walk on. But now you have a lot of office developments, you have a lot of redevelopment, like Ponce City Market, that's happening in part because of the belt line. You have, not my generation, but younger generations are much more willing to hop on a bicycle and ride to work, and they love to have that option. And so, we're looking to continue to grow that, because we have lots of folks who use our Big Creek Greenway. They don't necessarily use it right now to drive, ride a bicycle to work or walk to work, and I think that's going to change with the Halcyon development. And for us, I mentioned we're trying to go after the technology sector. Well, we have to have a place to put them, and that's where the Halcyon development has plans for over, I think right at 200,000 square feet of Class A office space. And that's vitally important for us to be able to be successful. If we want to, we can't just talk about it. You got to have a place to put them, and Halcyon is doing that for us. And we'd love, replicate the Halcyon in whatever size, bigger or smaller, elsewhere in the community. So we're excited about it. It's going to be opening in March of next year. Lots of restaurants, shops, and
Could you give us a teaser of some of the leases now?
I'm trying to. We have I know there's a chef in Atlanta that's going to be opening a couple of restaurants. I think right now they only have one restaurant location still left. So it's just and
wow.
one thing I will say
really?
is it's
wow.
It's really not national change. One of the things that there's been a shift away is the casual dining. Nothing at Applebee's or Ruby Tuesdays, but people just don't want to go to those as much. They want those unique dining experiences.
Interesting. And
this will have some of those unique dining experiences. They will also have a new concept, which is really they call it it's an open food hall. So it's sort of like imagine the old food court in a mall, but think of it outdoors, wide open doors. They can it's just going to be an environment so you can have this, like I said, no one else has done this food court concept in Metro Atlanta to date. So we're excited about this. This is our gateway into our community. Exit 12 is our gateway into Forsyth County, and we're excited about it. We'll also have our first dining theater. Embassy Suites will be built in there, so this will be our first upscale hotel that's going to be built at this development as well. They'll also have plans for a true hotel. So as a community, we're just delighted they're in our community after all these years of kind of working out the details. For them to finally be going vertical with the construction is really kind of a game changer for Forsyth County.
And in closing, if you could give the contact information, if I'm a resident, or I'm saying if I'm thinking of being a resident and moving here,
sure.
Who should I contact? And if I'm a business that wants to move here or develop business here, who should I contact?
Well, I mentioned earlier the funding we got from the county. One of the things we did with the funding we got from the county was create a brand new website specifically for econ development, chooseforsyth.org. It's very simple to remember, chooseforsyth.org.
Well, thank you very much to Robert Long, our guest, who's the VP Economic Development Officer at Forsyth and the City of Cumming, and Chamber of Commerce, I'm sorry. Thank you, and a reminder to keep on developing your business. Goodbye.
Thank you.
I don't know if you could hear the
the noise of it.
Yeah, I wanted to get in a few more questions, but
I can always have me back.
Yeah, there isn't a guest I have that I can't go on for another half hour. But there's just so much, and it goes way beyond just what I said in the beginning. It's not marketing and sales. It's all the infrastructure and in your particular case. I look at it the following way.